Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Creaney, Vice President of Product Integration with Advanced Vapor Devices. Thank you very much for joining me today, Casey.
Hey, David. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It truly is my pleasure. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Casey, I typically start with a little bit of background. How was it that you found yourself in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I went to school on the East Coast at the University of Maryland. And I originally went to school for architecture and design. When I got out of school, I moved straight to the West Coast and was in the kind of build and design world, if you will. My wife and I owned a build and design firm that was doing well in California. My personal experience is my mom has had breast cancer 3 times throughout my life. She's doing great now, has worked through all of it, but I saw firsthand at the time, kind of the devastation of some of the pharmaceutical impacts and what cannabis could do for pain relief specifically. So I played Division I sports in college as well, and I used it as kind of a recovery tool. So when I got the opportunity some years ago to get into KushCo, I jumped at it, honestly, because it was the intersection for me of, that design architectural mindset with the cannabis industry. I was lucky enough to get in over there and was running some product development stuff for Kush before coming over here to AVD.
What was it like moving from the architectural side of design and development into the cannabis side?
I get asked this a lot, and it's eerily similar, honestly. When you talk about concept to completion, a lot of these builds, whether you're doing a ground up house build, right, or an apartment build, or you're doing a ground up product build. It's just instead of my plumbers and my electricians, I have my industrial designers and my mechanical engineers, right? But in terms of piecing a project together and trying to get all the way to a launch period, it's eerily similar, honestly. And I think that's why, I've kind of seeded into this role here at AVD running the product department, because that's naturally trained in a project management background, right? And able to apply, I think, those same skill sets into what we're doing now. And right now it's the intersection of technology and cannabis. So I could not be happier to be in the seat that I'm in.
Was there any point with your personal exposure to cannabis where you saw a product or something on the market and just thought, you know what, I could probably do a better job making this?
I think that's my natural instinct, sometimes to my own detriment, about just user experience and products in general. Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm lucky to be in this industry, but I think just creating a user experience is really where my passion lies. Right. Something that's going to be in people's hands day in and day out, and taking passion in knowing how they're going to experience that product, whatever that is. And trying to do the best that you can from the development side of things to make sure that experience is seamless.
So how did you find yourself at AVD?
After KushCo, I had my son, I have a 3-year-old right now, and I took a couple months just to kind of, be there for my family and my first son and really enjoy and settle into that experience. And then shortly after, AVD had an opening in an operations role, and knowing that I had kind of set up a lot of the infrastructure at Kush around the project management department, I stepped into the role here at AVD and fulfilled a need immediately, I would think, and then moved over to the product department. My ultimate goal was always to be in the product department. I think it actually played in my benefit, honestly, because I learned the ins and outs of the business first and foremost, and was able to sit in the proper role, right? And now we have a team of 7 other people in the product department stateside that are, involved in the R&D lab. We're doing a ton of testing, and really excited about the team that we've put together over the last couple of years.
Well, I really applaud you for taking some time off. It's something that I don't feel like enough guys do after a kid is born. It's just kind of like, you get a week or a handful of days from your company and that's it. And it's just, I don't know, it's a crucial time in kind of building that bond.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I would agree. And what I think what I've realized about myself is I have other roles to play as well, right? I have a role to play as a father. And if I don't fulfill those roles, I'm not going to be the best version of myself when I come, into the 9 to 5 of the Monday through Friday here. So I think that's part of growing up too, right? Is really analyzing yourself and really knowing and being true to what you need to be able to, at the end of the day, I want to be a top performer, right? I think all of us do. We all want to be A players and we want to continue to succeed in our industry. So, I had to take care of myself for a minute. And honestly, just a short, brief period of time was all I needed. And that was well worth it in the long run.
What sport did you play?
I played lacrosse.
Okay.
I was born and raised on the East Coast, so you're kind of naturally fed into that ecosystem. And yeah, it got me into school and allowed me to succeed and meet a lot of the connections and networking that I have today.
Do you still have the same? Are you able to satiate the same competitive spirit that you have in athletics? With your role in product development.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always been that way, if you will. It's the old thing where it's not that I love to win so much, I just hate to lose, right? And I think that boils over into everything that we do day to day, especially into the product department. We're on the tip of the iceberg here in terms of advancements in technology, right? Especially in our industry compared to other industries. So I'm excited about it and really just trying to prep not only myself, but everything we can do over at AVD to take advantage of those opportunities.
What is the philosophy of your product development department? Which I think you said you had like seven engineers on staff. Like, how do you go from napkin sketch to bringing a product to market? And what happens when something maybe falls down along the way?
Yeah, great question. We start with our intent, right? If you want to develop a product at a certain price point, we've seen a lot of the industry's technology, right? I think that we feel confident that we could do that at any point, but to solve a problem is a different scenario, right? And I think that takes evaluating not only the market, but where we're at as a company, and really trying to solve a problem. I think that starts from the beginning too, and establishing your intent from the beginning, allowing time for adaptation right along the way. The market is constantly changing in the cannabis industry. That part is known. Mm-hmm. So being able to adapt along the way, but really starting out with an intent to solve a particular problem, right? And being able to refer back to your original intent, I think along the way is really a guiding principle that in product development specifically you need. Otherwise, the gate for those opportunities and those developments keeps getting wider and wider, right? It's not funneled down. So, we lean on process a lot as well, because once that process is implemented, we can rely on it. We can look back to it. It's there for a reason and make sure that we have all of our checkpoints. And it also ensures that in terms of innovation and development, we are constantly progressing.
What are the problems that need solving right now in cannabis?
Good question. I think the health and safety conversation is going to continue to come to front. Right. I mean, we all use these products. I want to feel confident in the product that I'm handing to my brother. Right. So naturally from the start, our concern around health and safety has always been there. I think that the head, with regulation that's coming to a point here is going to mix integrally the raw material supply chains and the materials that are used for these builds, and really kind of hunker down on maybe some of the industry's old philosophies versus what's going to be new when really you're going into kind of a delivery system, right? You're starting to cross realms of medical device certification. So from our standpoint, I think it starts with the raw material, right? And knowing that you have health grade materials going into your builds that are really going to last the test of time and not just be kind of the cheap win for price conscious reasons.
Okay. That's interesting that you have the personal connection where, your brother uses the product. Were you at AVD when Vape Gate happened?
I was at KushCo.
KushCo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in the industry, but I was not at AVD.
Okay. How do you think that impacted specifically the vape vertical? And now that you're at AVD, what checks do you guys have in place just to try and manage that type of risk?
Yeah, I mean, another great question. I think it's tough for us because we're the hardware manufacturer, right? We don't actually touch the product. Now we work with great partners that fill their product into our hardware, but from our standpoint, we're trying to focus on the hardware itself, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of what happened back then was kind of an integral mix of what was contained in that hardware. So from our standpoint, I mean, we're trying to get out ahead of a lot of these things. If you look at, organizations like ASTM, trying to set standards in the industry and trying to use some of our platforms to set those standards, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. I think when you look at tobacco versus cannabis, tobacco has set the framework, if you will, for how you get to FDA and regulation, but it is no way, shape, or form, similar to how cannabis users actually use cannabis products versus, let's say, cigarettes, right? Or nicotine. So trying to develop and isolate those individual areas within that framework that we need to separate out and say, hey, cannabis is different here. These are the metrics by which we need to measure by. Here's the data to back it, right? And start making little steps towards a progression of standardization.
How is vape hardware different for cannabis than it is for, like you said, nicotine or tobacco?
Vastly different. I think we're focused on flavor and performance quite often, right? And the constituents of cannabis oil, you're not rapidly trying to apply just an all gas, no brakes approach. It's not all about cloud all the time, right? There are heavy weights on the cloud aspect as well, but flavor preservation with different oil types specifically, right? I'm not sure if you use this product as well, but when you have a nicotine device versus, let's say, a cannabis device, the flavor, the experience is completely different. When we're developing cannabis hardware, it is curtailed to curtailed to oil type specifically, right? We're trying to solve a problem within that oil category because the differences in oil categories from cannabis is a wide range as opposed to nicotine. So we're trying to accommodate for all solutions within that realm.
How do you accommodate for all those solutions and still make, a product that's not going to break down or kind of lose consumer confidence?
That's exactly right. I mean, we have one of the lowest failure rates in the industry, and I think we've built our reputation on that from the start. That's a lot of quality control, at the manufacturing level that allows us to do that. And by the time that our products hit our consumers' hands, we want to feel confident that they're not going to have issues with it. We want to be proactive about what oil type they're putting in that. Our sales team does a great job of onboarding them. And really we're looking again to solve problems for them, right? Make sure that they have a reliable hardware that they can count on from years to come.
What does your day-to-day design cycle look like?
A little bit crazy. We're constantly trying to innovate. I mean, it's our obligation, I feel, as one of the industry leaders in cannabis vape technologies, to innovate every year. So we have projects, yes, that we're trying to continue to isolate for customers specifically, right? But we have whiteboard sessions and blue sky sessions all the time, and I think that's a natural part of the design process, right? There needs to be that creative outlet to really express and compile some of the things that we're learning along the way and have a drop-off point, right? That could be the initiation for something new. So I'm lucky to have the team that I do around me, and I think a lot of great ideas are coming, not only from the front lines of the sales team, but internally as well, based on experience, other industries. Really, again, it's the intersection of cannabis and technology, and the types of people that work in that environment are constantly creative, right? We're constantly trying to solve problems, again, mainly because we're users ourselves.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned how fast moving this market is. How long does it take you typically to bring a new product to market?
Great question. That varies, I would say. There's simplistic designs that'll be a few weeks, honestly, right? Depending on the material or the mold or the finish. And then there's integrated designs that, can take anywhere from 6 to 8 months. I think, again, trying to isolate and really look at what problem we're solving is where I keep coming back to, because it's going to guide that development, right? Is the problem something that has to do with speed and readiness and inventory management, right? That's going to take a different path than something that's really trying to check all the boxes and doesn't have a budget, let's say. So, I would say it varies. It's all over the place. We make everything from all-in-ones to batteries to cartridges to mouthpieces. So all of those products take on different life cycles. Obviously, none of our customers want to wait too long for any of those solutions. So we are constantly on that kind of time ticker. And I think, again, lucky to be surrounded by the team that I am, because we've been able to build efficiencies in place to allow us to succeed.
A lot of these products come down to like fit, form, and function. Do you use any sort of like rapid prototyping or 3D printing to kind of get your designs off the ground and running?
Absolutely. I knew some of the engineering questions were going to come out here. This is I feel like this is where we connect a lot of times. No, Absolutely. There's 3D prints, right? Those 3D prints will give us an idea of form and function. We go into CNC prototypes, which gives you, a better idea of the manufacturability of that product, and the DFM stages before we go into any tooling or anything like that. So we have multiple stages and multiple iterations to make sure, and multiple checkpoints. I mean, again, oil validation too, from our standpoint. Luckily, I think we come from the industry. We understand how this oil interacts. So trying to test for those specific things in our product at various stages provide different benefits.
When you talk about DFM or designing for manufacturability, is it difficult to find a manufacturing partner, or do you sort of have like your trusted base?
We are the manufacturer.
Oh, you do your own manufacturing. Sorry.
We control, absolutely. Yeah. So we control all of our supply chain. So again, I think coming into AVD, versus other companies, that was kind of the ticker, is we are the manufacturer. We're not going through a third party. There's no, from a development standpoint, that's a dream.
Yeah.
You have direct access, right? We are making decisions and alterations in real time. And again, I think that's one of the advantages that we have in the industry. That's what has allowed us to be successful from a product development standpoint.
No, I apologize for the confusion there. When it comes to the design of the product, with an engineering background, how do you prevent yourself from like scope creep when it comes to wanting to continue perfecting a design before it goes to market?
Again, I'll go back to the same thing. What problem are we solving, right? Because those kind of processes are implemented, to protect us from ourselves, honestly. I think if we had the choice, we would continue refining and refining and refining, but we do have a set standard that we are trying to meet, right, as AVD. And I don't think that any one of us are really willing to sacrifice that standard, but we are always looking for places to try and be more efficient and continue that process. It's a whirlwind of an effort, I could say, in the development process world, right? There's ideas and new technology that enters the system at all times. And I think that the smartest thing is to be ready for that, right? And not be so resistant to new technologies that may be mature in other places or other parts of the world.
You had mentioned how much attention you guys pay to the materials that you use. Have you run into any supply chain issues or any issues controlling costs with inflation?
We have not. I think, again, that's one of the benefits of owning our own production facility and manufacturing and raw material supply chain is we've prepped for that, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that we don't necessarily get impacted by third parties because there are no third parties there. It's allowed us to fulfill orders through Chinese New Year sometimes, right? We've really, I think, worked through the kinks of that. And that's been one of the staples of our business in general.
Okay. Is there any particular, I'm just curious, software that you like to work in when it comes to designing new products?
Our designers work in a couple different ones. I would say, can I transition that question into maybe software that we're thinking about? Because that's where my head goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when you think about the implementation of software, let's say, into a product, I think that's where my head goes as soon as we bring up software and talk about hardware. NFC functionality, right? And I think having some capabilities in the future that are going to allow end users to really access that software side of things without having to go too in depth, right? I think the barrier has always been around potentially having to download an app and then log in and scan and all of that. I think the industry is now getting to a place where you can do things other ways, right? It can be a more simplistic, straightforward user experience. And I think those are the things that are exciting to me when you talk about the advancements of the industry and really the merge of these two sectors.
So is there an IoT play in vapes? When you talk about near field, is it near field communication? What is the opportunity for smart vapes?
I mean, I think, again, we're already seeing that, right? Yeah. That already kind of exists. You see a lot of the digital screens on the batteries, right? A lot of the tracking. Now, how accurate a lot of it is, I'm not, too sold on just yet. But I think, again, that's some of the benefit of being from the industry is we're really trying to map those things on our end, right? I think it starts rudimentary and it starts with programming, and then it moves into the technology aspect where you are able to adjust not only your temperature settings, but your ramp rate, even different cores and different sides with the touch of a button. it's a tough. We've seen those things mature in other industries, right? Especially in the nicotine space, and they're starting to merge slightly. So you can see some of that technology be starting to accept it over in our space as well.
Okay. I guess I'm curious how, in your opinion, like when you're looking at a product roadmap, how much smarter do you think a vape can get?
Much
Yeah.
smarter. Yeah, like I said, again, we're at the tip of the iceberg in our industry. A lot of these technologies for things that we want to do already exist. It's just about maturing a raw material supply chain to really get that cost down to enough where it makes sense into these individual units, right? But the potential and the opportunity is there. I mean, again, you see the smile on my face. I'm excited about where things I think could potentially go, and really, trying to hunker down from our end on how we make those things happen. It's technology exists. I'll say that.
You guys have a number of brand partners that you work with. Um, who do you know? Is it like how many are you working with now? Is it like 400?
Yeah, 400 plus. I mean, we work with a lot of the top brands in the space. And I think that really exudes itself in kind of our white glove service, right? When you get on the phone with an ABD team member, I don't think it's the same as some of our other competitors, right? Just not only from the knowledge standpoint of being, from this space, but really understanding hardware in and out and what kind of hardware I think is going to work for their problem that they're trying to solve with their oil.
What do you look for in a brand partner?
The partnership mentality, I would say. We don't treat our part like it's not a transactional relationship to us, right? We're trying to make sure, and we understand a lot of times that these hardware decisions are large decisions that companies are making, right, and banking on. So the white glove service from our standpoint, it goes both ways, if you will. We're always looking for a partner that's willing to work with us, and from a development standpoint, selfishly, I'm always looking for beta customers and our partners because it gives the opportunity for us to help go through development process with one of them.
Okay. How are you guys able to make such hyper customization possible?
I think our speed and our versatility has to do with the factory, right? And owning our own factory and our raw material supply chain. Like I said, we're able to make decisions in real time. And these decisions are coming from the front lines. They're coming from what the industry is asking for. So being able to pivot and make moves quickly, I think, is an advantage that we have.
Do you find are you retooling often? And do you have mold making capabilities in house as well?
We do. Mold refining capabilities are constant, I would say. I mean, run rates of plastic injection molded parts are depending on the texture of that part, whether it's glossy or matte, the matte's going to run 2 times as fast, right? So we're constantly updating, constantly keeping track, but it's all a part of our integration and systems to make sure that there's constant upkeep and product performance. All ties back into that failure rate and that high level of quality control.
Okay. So last time I checked, vapes were like 26% of sales, or the category was about 26% of sales in the overall cannabis market. Do you foresee that going up or down?
I foresee that going up. I mean, again, if you use the product, it's especially if you have kids or something, it's smoking flower, I think is the old staple for sure, but there's a discreteness and a level of, control I think that you have in a vape that you don't have with flower. Right. Again, we all come from the flower. We're stewards of the flower. But at the end of the day, I think the delivery device that we've been able to manufacture and put into the market is something that is applicable for user experience, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? Having an integrated user experience that makes it seamless for that user to, use cannabis, right? In a discreet, concealed way.
Is the opportunity for expansion in the vape category, is that from transitioning people from flower or from an entire new customer base?
I think a little bit of both. I think that, the cannabis sector, like I said, is appealing to a lot of the cannabis industry. It's continuing to grow, but I also think that there's new users. I think that even looking at some of the recent rulings, right? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the public has known that marijuana is, has medicinal use, right? And I think that more people are trying to get on board with that and stepping into that realm for the first time.
Um, you guys have a number of exclusive partnerships. How do you manage an exclusive partnership? And is it difficult to do something with exclusivity when you know it might have much wider appeal?
Look, I mean, great question. I mean, yeah, that was something that we battled with early on. And I think what we realized is a lot of our brand partners are great partners to work with, and they have an extensive network to begin with, right? So if we have the opportunity to create a custom solution for one of them and we can do everything that we can to support them in launching that product and that process, their success is our success, right? So I think our mindset goes towards, again, solving problems for our partners. And if it's not necessarily to our detriment, it's really us just trying to grow with them, right?
Mhm.
Some of them are big to begin with, right? And again, we're trying to provide a solution that allows them to continue that growth. But other partners are, just kind of starting out and looking for solutions, and we want to get on with those partners so that we can build together. Because, like I said, their success is our success. If at the end of the day they win, everybody's happy.
Do you get nervous when a new product goes to market?
Always, I will say, but confidence relies in the process, right?
Mhm.
Knowing that we've gone through our steps, knowing that we've gone through our procedure and our validation, more importantly, we do a heavy amount of validation in our development process. And we know that by the time the sales team has that in their hands, we are completely confident in that product. We don't want to have to look back. We've already run it through all of the rigor that you would ever see in the real world times 10. And, ensured that that product has performed or made adjustments, left room to make adjustments during that process to alleviate for some of the things that we didn't think about.
Was your most successful product launch so far with Brick?
So far, that's been one of our top ones. Yes, absolutely. That's, to be clear, yes, it is that is our most successful. I think it was also their most successful.
Okay.
That was a great relationship. It continues to be, honestly. And I think that is what exudes a great partner, is somebody like Curaleaf. Being open to the development process and engaging with us to create a product in the market that is new and novel for them. And, as you can see with his success, doing really well. And I think speaking to a lot of the market.
Have you had one that fell flat yet?
I wouldn't say fell flat, but there are segments, like batteries, for example, that are a little bit less in the market than the actual hardware aspect of it from our customer base standpoint. So I wouldn't say fell flat, but again, if we're solving a problem in the marketplace, there's going to be customers. That's kind of, either we're solving it directly for those customers, we're learning more about the industry, but at the end of the day, we're solving a problem it's white space in the market, right? So as long as we're doing that from a product perspective, I feel great about our development efforts.
So what's coming next from AVD?
Oh, I would love to share as much as I can, but I would say that, we're gonna really hunker down and build on the success that we've seen so far in the industry, right? I think the things that we do well are going to continue to blossom. And then, like I said before, we're obligated to innovate, right? That is how I feel about this industry and our position in it. So, the day-to-day continues in terms of new search and evolution and trying to solve problems within not only our technology, but branching out into how we can incorporate existing technologies into our space as well.
Going back a little bit just to your personal experience, what was your family's response when you transitioned, when you left architecture and moved to cannabis product development?
I think by that time it had kind of entered the social ecosystem a little bit more gently, if you will.
Mm.
Again, going back to my mom's experience, though, it wasn't necessarily new, I would say. Nobody else in my family really used cannabis for the most part back then, but I think now kind of it's been a little bit more socially accepted. I also see the benefit and some of the stories that I hear from people that are genuinely using this product, right, as pain relief, as a health and safety measure. And I think that changes the perspective of a lot of people, not only my family, but a lot of people. And I think I'm excited about it, honestly, because that's how I've always felt in it. I think that's how a lot of people in this industry felt about it. But we're now getting to a place where, it's becoming part of day-to-day conversation without any stipulation.
Do you have any predictions or expectations as to when we might finally see federal legalization?
Oh, man, that's a tough one because every time that I expect or hope for it, it seems to be another year, another year, another year. So, no, but I mean, I think in reality, I do think it's coming soon. I think the stars are starting to finally align. And again, like I said, from our standpoint, cell health safety standards are starting to be implemented, and they didn't exist before. So, I think in that sense, it gives me optimistic hope that that day is coming.
When a new state comes online, is it like they're starting over in terms of like the path of a vape user? Like, are they starting at ground one, or are they kind of like picking, man, what's a better way to word this? I apologize. Like, is a more mature markets, like when someone like New York comes online, are they kind of starting where California is at, or is it kind of like starting at, step one of vape education and knowledge?
I think it's kind of a combo. And again, another great question. I think it's a combo because they're going to use probably the infrastructure that has worked or been accepted, maybe other states, to help expedite that process for legalization. As far as a new market goes, though, it's exciting. I mean, California is mature, and I think you can kind of, when you look at the numbers that are happening in California, they're consistent, right? Because it's been a mature market for a while. But when you look at somewhere like New York, it's crazy. It's a boom for sure because it's new and introductory. And, at the end of the day, I can imagine that a lot of people in New York just want to walk around and have something to smoke on occasionally while they're outside, right? It's a fitting market where I think there's a lot of new opportunity, even though they are using a lot of the framework for the existing markets.
Well, thank you. That's very gracious of you to say. It was a good question, even though I had to like sort of stumble and rabble through the beginning of it. But you've been very, very kind with your time, and I really appreciate it. Sharing your perspective, especially from a product development side. Is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or your work at AVD?
No, I think I'll just leave you with one last thing here, but I think us at AVD are again committed to innovation. I think that we have a team of experts that come from the space that are working day in and day out to innovate creative solutions for the cannabis industry, right? And the vaporizer technology space in general. I'm excited about where things are going. I think we are at the precipice of, getting to a point where a lot of the existing technology that exists in other spaces is going to start to enter our space. And I'm looking forward to how those advancements help, the pursuit of acceptance for cannabis in general.
No, I'm certainly looking forward to the new advancements as well. And honestly, it's inspiring your approach to product development in the cannabis space. I don't know. It's refreshing to hear.
I appreciate it, David. Well, as always, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
I feel the same. But before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Casey Creaney, Vice President of Product Innovation at Advanced Vapor Devices, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.